So next we're going to move on to one called the Mountain Meadow Massacre. This is one that occurs between a group of Mormon settlers in the St. George area, and they kind of pull in the Paiute tribe. We won't talk a ton about that. And then a group of people, they're called the Baker Francher Party, who are on their way to California. This is during the time of the Utah War. So this is when the army is on their way, but they haven't arrived yet. So people are prepping for war, but no one's actually fighting. They haven't arrived yet, nothing like that. So that timing is important because it's going to set the tone for reactions. Now, there is no, clearly there was wrong done on this, but we're going to not approach it as a blame game. We're going to try and just look at the facts of what happened and go from there. Okay, so this group from Arkansas is on their way to California. The map that you're looking at the bottom is where they went to, where they were going. When you guys did that map the other day, that trails map, that was really important because that's how everyone came through. That South Pass is essentially the only way to effectively get through the Rocky Mountains without having to go on huge cliffs and things that are really crazy dangerous. So that's why they go clear up even though they're going over to California. So we are going to talk about how both sides feel about this. Obviously the side of the group that gets killed is going to be a little easier to see why they're victims, but we're not going to discount everyone else's feelings. Okay, so let's set the scene in the St. George area. Everyone's getting ready for Johnston's army to come over and to start just attacking any and all Mormons and trying to kill them all. That's what they've had happen in the past, and that's what they're kind of prepping for the future. When you fight, a lot of the casualties happen because of a lack of food, because all of the places where you usually plant food and all of the people who are usually doing the farming is where you do the fighting and who is doing the fighting. So all of the people there are on rations. So the same thing that we talked about what happened to Johnston's army once they got there through the winter, you start eating less than you normally would a day. And so the whole area is on rations. That way, if they were to get into this huge big fight, they wouldn't run out of food. So in preparation for this government army coming out, they're on rations. Then they hear about this group that's coming through, and this group is bragging about killing a Mormon leader when they were around them before. Okay, this is total hearsay. It's reported whether they actually said it or not, who knows? But when you are in kind of a panic mode, you're like, the shoe's gonna drop at any moment, this army's gonna arrive, they're gonna be here, this is a big deal. Great, now all of a sudden we have this other group coming through and they've already started killing people who are Mormons. And it's just another thing that we're gonna have to deal with. Okay, so these guys are freaking out. They go through Utah, and you can see that's the Utah territory at the time, but all of that is, a lot of that is just in Utah. So from Fort Bridger over, so Salt Lake down is still in Utah today. That's like Utah to St. George. So it happened a little bit closer to Cedar City, but right in that area. Okay, so they went through there, the Mormons hear that they're coming. When they're there, they end up meeting with them around Cedar City. That's what you're looking at there. Okay, so that's kind of setting the scene for this Mormon group. Now let's talk about the Baker Francher Party. The Baker Francher Party is kind of like wrong place. Well, they're absolutely wrong place, wrong time. Bad things are happening and they just get totally caught in the crosshairs. So they have nothing for or against Mormons as far as we know. Maybe they like them, maybe they don't, but their plan is not to do anything but pass through Utah and get to California. So they happen to be going right before Johnston's army. Not really their fault. Like they couldn't have predicted that happened. So then they come, they stop at Fort Bridger. Remember how we talked about they're kind of like old time gas stations. So you stop and you get supplies and you move on. Going from Arkansas to California is a long way. So if you were to have all your supplies for that entire trip, you would be packing a ton of stuff. But where there's people who are living there permanently, they know that they can resupply. So they plan on that. They plan on stopping and resupplying so they don't bring enough to go the whole time. So that's what they do. They stop at Fort Bridger, they stop in Salt Lake, they start going down south because they're going to Southern California, at least to the southern half of the state. So they didn't go back up through Idaho and drop back down. There's a different way that they were going to go. So they come down to Cedar City. When they're there, they need more supplies. They've used all the supplies that they got in Salt Lake. They're like, well, we want to buy some supplies and keep moving. The thing is all of the Mormons there are on rations. If they're not eating their food supply, they're also not going to sell it to strangers. And so they're like, no, you can't buy our food supply. Don't you know that there's an army coming? We're on rations. I'm not going to sell you anything. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, we can't really go unless you sell us stuff because we have no food. We'll starve and die. So they're kind of at a standstill. Now we have Baker Francher Group who is like, what is up with these Mormons? Why won't they just sell us stuff? Like, cool, go on rations, defend yourself, but we're totally stuck here until you're done. And we don't want to be here during war. Just sell us stuff and let us go. And they just won't do it. They refuse to do it. So what they do is they're like, we need to talk to Brigham Young. Brigham Young would know what to do. He'll tell us if they're okay to go, if they're not okay to go. But Brigham Young's clear up in Salt Lake. So they send a runner on a horse to Brigham Young. Send the rider on a horse, running the whole way as fast as they can get there, with a letter that essentially says, there's a group of pioneers here. They need supplies before they can move on. What should we do? Because we're on rations. We're not selling anything right now. What do we do? Are they here to hurt us, or should we just sell them stuff and let them go? What do we do? The problem with this is, in order to get to Salt Lake and back, it's not like driving where you could do it in a day. It'd be a long day, but you could totally do it. They're on horseback and they have to sleep and rest and eat and do all of these things. So it takes a day to get there, a day to get back, and that's really hard riding. So in the meantime, they're waiting for this letter to get back. There's this guy, his name is John D. Lee. What he does is he creates this little Mormon militia. Now, this Mormon militia is like a little army. So militia is just like untrained fighters. So he gets together these fighters, and he is a Mormon leader. He's like, hey guys, we got to protect ourselves. I need you to come help me so we can protect ourselves. So that's where they're at with that. He's like, we need to get rid of them before they get rid of us. So the part with the Paiutes that I told you I'd mention, you guys are welcome to do more research on this. If we were in class in a normal situation, normally we research this and we actually debate it back and forth, a couple of these conflicts. So most of the time you get more information, but since we're in a different setting, we aren't going to do that. Obviously, it'd be really hard to do a debate, but you can go and look at it and see what both sides have to say about it. Okay, so what he does is he is like, hey, the Paiutes are going to do, he kind of blames the Paiutes, like the Paiutes are stirring up trouble. You guys need to stay over here on this hill. So they're off in kind of a secluded area, this Baker Francher party. So he takes a group of militiamen up there and he has this whole thing planned. So what he does is he takes all of the people and he lines them up and takes all of their weapons away. At this point, they're weaponless, they're unarmed, they're not fighting, they're not doing anything, they're just lined up. And then John D. Lee says, halt, each man do your duty. They then proceed to shoot and kill everybody except for 17 kids. These kids were all 6 years old and younger. Okay, so that's a massacre, right? Killing everyone, and a massacre typically denotes that it's very one-sided and one side isn't fighting back. Okay, so they just completely kill everybody in this party. There's a lot of people in this party. There are a lot of people in this party. There's about 120 people that they shoot and kill. So this is not like 5 or 6 people. This is a lot of people that they shoot and kill. As time goes on, these parties can be bigger and bigger as they go through because there's more stopping points and it's a lot easier to travel, a lot of known trails, stuff like that. So 120 people are killed. They decide not to kill the 17 kids who are aged 6 and younger. I want you to think to yourself, 6 years old, you were in first grade. Do you remember things from first grade? Yeah. Do you think that those kids will probably remember this? Yeah. What they then did is they're like, oh, these kids are so young and innocent. We'll adopt them and raise them as our own. Kind of like a weird, dark, twisty ending to a creepy movie, right? Okay, so that's what happened. It was a horrific, horrific accident. The cherry on top is after this happened, the writer gets back with a note from Brigham Young that says, they mean you no harm. Sell them the supplies, let them go in peace. Too little, too late. It's already happened. So now we've got John D. Lee. This is a picture of him. He was arrested and executed for his crimes. So he's not like left to live his life however he wants. He was held responsible, accountable. He was excommunicated from the Mormon church. All the things happened to him, because that was a terrible thing to do. Okay, this is one that we debate because normally in class, not because it doesn't, let me rephrase that. We debate it not in the fact that what happened was wrong, because clearly 120 people dying is wrong. But we decide if who's at fault, okay? And surprisingly enough, every single time that I do it, usually both parties win. Okay, in all my classes, I've never had it be a clean sweep one way or the other, because you have to get into the mindset of the people at the time. If you think about the Mormons at the time, you can have some sympathy for them. If you go into the mindset of the Baker Francher party at the time, you can totally feel sympathy for him, right? So that's why that one's not cut and dry in a lot of ways. Now, this is not something that the people of Arkansas have forgotten. My husband lived there for years, and they had multiple statues in town that write down exactly what happened and why you should never trust Mormons and all of this. This is not something that they let go. They revisit it every year on the anniversary in September, and it's like a thing that they still bring up and talk about today. So it is not like all's forgiven because this was a long time ago. There's still a lot of hard feelings about it. Okay, so some controversial things happen. And like I said, this is not all of them by any means. There's a lot more issues, a lot more conflicts between the Mormons and different tribes in different areas because of how they move and how they take different things, both sides. So there's a lot more conflicts, but these are just some examples. So Mormons versus the government, Mormons versus different pioneer groups coming in wrong time, and then Mormons against the natives. So there is a lot of things going on in here. So it's not all smooth sailing once they get here by any means. So you've got 2 days. You've got Friday, today, and Monday to finish watching these and to take the quiz on it. As always, if you have any questions on it, shoot me an email and I will be happy to help you.